members of our class have been chosen by their fellow seniors to speak today, and the first is an English major from Little Rock, Arkansas, Sarah Fan.
It is a surprise to find myself before you today to give a speech. Public speaking and I are not well acquainted. My academic presence is naturally one of silence. I don't really like to talk in class. Any attempts to break the habit of silence are fought with agility on both the mental and the physical levels. When I raise my hand in class, first a strange, non-alcohol-related flush rises to my face. My heart palpitates insistently, perhaps to remind me that I should engage in aerobic activity more regularly. In those crucial moments, while I still have the chance to transform my raised hand into a grooming motion or a one-arm stretch, doubt would creep in. Do you really know what you want to say? Even so, is it really worth saying? Won't you just be wasting everyone's time, including your own? For years, having hair long enough to tuck casually behind my ear was key to preserving my in-class persona. I had done the reading, usually. What was the problem? I acquired the habit of in-class silence early in my college career. As a freshman, I assumed the professor would utter profanities of such grace and brilliance that my mouth, if at all engaged, would merely hang open. Silence is neutral, silence is absorptive. What more efficient way to become knowledgeable than by not interfering? To my chagrin, professors, the fools, insisted on emphasizing discussion. This was a blow. Had I not cultivated collegiate expectations of grand lecture halls and tweedy professors delivering bombastic monologues dished up by Hollywood a la Back to School and Soul Man? Where was the massive lecture hall, the students silent except when called upon? And why didn't anyone use the chalkboard? Remember, I am an English major. Recognizing the willingness of other students to speak up became crucial. Other people would do the job, albeit with varying levels of success, and I would simply remain out of the fray, free to evaluate and judge while minimizing my personal risk. We all know that professors are experts at shooting down students' comments, and I, for one, did not want to be anyone's casualty. On page 3 of the Amherst students' commencement issue, professor and writer David Foster Wallace complains that students' fear of speaking in class, quote, drives me nuts because they aren't afraid of us, they're afraid of each other, end quote. Actually, David, we're afraid of both. And being quiet, I could spare myself the approbation not only of the professor, but of my peers who play jury to the professor's judge. As someone who was guilty of using descriptive phrases rather than names to designate fellow students, I did not want to be referred to as that annoying girl in philosophy. Silence was a coat of armor, conferring the ease of anonymity. The secret of either my aptitude or my ineptitude was shared solely between the professor and myself. The professor, of course, reserves the right to mock me and perhaps my LJST midterm, but only in the privacy of office hours, thank you very much. This semester, however, I took my smallest class ever, which consisted of only 6 students. The pressure to speak suddenly assumed grave proportions. There was nowhere to hide, no genteel seat in the back to slip into and disguise either late arrival or incompetence. The class even featured that most frightening of egalitarian situations, the round table. I was at a loss. I had managed a fair share of seminars with little contribution, mostly confining my intellectual participation to a slavish concern for well-kept notes. And now I was not only 1/6 of the class, but the mute fraction at that. I was completely exposed. Even though the other 5 pulled their weight in a class that small, there had to be a substantial quota of awkward silences, only broken when the professor answered a question that he himself had posed. Reluctantly, I realized I could not continue as I always had. I could not limit my participation to agreeable nodding. Someone would have to say something, and in a class that small, someone eventually would devolve onto me. I would have to talk in class. As you can see, I survived. I did not explode, I did not implode, I did not inspire anyone to rise from their chairs and expel me from the college post-haste. I did not faint, I did not have a heart attack. Like aerobic activity, I became more comfortable with frequency. Slowly, it ceased to become a big deal. So I've told you about this anomalous class undoubtedly to conclude that despite the pain, the risk of high blood pressure, and risk of personal embarrassment, I should have spoken up more and often in class during my Amherst years, enriched my education with participation, and not remained so petty, so concerned with enshrining my comfort zone. Well, no, that's not my conclusion. One experience proves nothing, I claim, and looking back on my Amherst education, as not a few of us are doing at this very moment, I feel it is always better to think positive. So I decide that I don't really regret my reticence. Okay, so maybe I wasn't fully intellectually engaged. Maybe I didn't understand the point of a small liberal arts education. Maybe, when it came down to it, I just missed out. But at least I was quiet. A state to which I shall now return. Thank you.
Next up, we'll have Victor Hu, who comes to us from Taipei, Taiwan. He is an interdisciplinary major, and I'm going to get this right, East Asian History, Political Science, History, and International Relations.
I spent a lot of time on history. I've reflected a lot this past week on what a 4-minute or 5-minute senior speech is supposed to accomplish. Well, ideally, I like to change all your lives. This may be a little bit optimistic given the time frame, completely possible in 5 or 6 minutes. I think I'll just try and give you a few words, which, with the Lord's grace, you might remember past this afternoon. A few weeks ago, as a few of us may remember, I think most of us with the end of finals have already executed the delete and purge commands up here. I talked about ideals and how our Amherst experiences have informed and shaped and in some ways obscured the ideals which we brought with us when we first arrived. And today I'd like to speak a little bit about values, and particularly the values that Amherst has instilled in us and taught us to cherish. Because I believe ultimately it is the values that we hold dear to us which constitute our moral framework, which will most profoundly affect the ideals which we hold, and the work we do in this world, and the ways in which we influence and interact with those around us. Now you're thinking, fantastic, another serious speech on vices and virtues. Well, now I'm down to 3 minutes. I'm sure that when many of us watch that scene in Braveheart, in which Mel Gibson screams under torture, "Freedom!" Of course, with a lot more drama than that. We all probably had what Professor Sarah would probably call an American tingle. After all, isn't freedom what we all believe America is about? The founding fathers of this country arrived here over 200 years ago to escape the tyranny of the British monarchy and in part to be able to practice their religion freely. And we arrived here 4 years ago to escape the authority of our parents and in part to be able to party freely. Amherst has taught us to value the independence and freedom of thought and has given us an environment in which we can largely do what we want, when we want, where we want, and as we want. And here and there we have a few restrictions, of course. But because of the vast array of opportunities open to us and the resources we have of time and, for the most part, of intelligence, I think that we've had here, as never before, the chance to really do our own thing. Yet, is freedom worthy of being our highest calling or value? As former Harvard professor Glenn Laurie said of his own experiences, "My constant quest to be free of constraint, to be unfettered, has been the source of much of my unhappiness." I'd like to suggest that when we pursue that kind of freedom, the gratification of our senses and personal ambitions, with disregard to the obligations we hold towards others, and even perhaps the restrictions imposed on us by our own consciences, then we become free, in so many words, to reap the harvest of loneliness and aimlessness brought on by our own selfishness. Now, there's one thing that I've learned at Amherst is the value of community and the fact that I do need others. And that the freedom that I value so much as an individual must ultimately be understood in the context of the relationships that I have with those around me. And I believe that it is only in relation to others, as John Donne and Martin Luther King wrote so famously about, that we can truly derive the satisfaction and happiness that we're all searching for. 4 years ago, I arrived here fresh off the boat from Taiwan. Now, those of you who knew me back then and particularly my long-suffering roommates, know that I would have fit right alongside Alicia Silverstone in her movie Clueless. There was one person, however, whom we've already heard about today from Chris Sang, who really made an incredible difference in my first year and in the years following, in my adjustment here, my personal growth, and my understanding of what it means to live a meaningful life. And Paul Sorrentino, I think it was 18 years ago, he quit a fine job in Michigan because he felt called to come work instead on college campuses with a Christian organization called InterVarsity, hoping to impact students at perhaps the most critical time of their lives when they're making decisions about their lifestyles and their futures. Now, in deciding to come work here, he clearly gave up a lot, had some serious sacrifices, not the least of which were financial security and the general peace of mind that comes with staying away from college students. Now, while today's society may not quite affirm his occupation in terms of prestige or luxury, I would venture to say that there are few around who are doing more meaningful work and can have the pleasure of knowing that the time they spend with the students is having such a positive impact, or the time they spend with people they're working with are influencing them as much. His life has really modeled the importance of compassion over mere tolerance, and of commitment to others over freedom of the self, and of giving over receiving. Final exhortations. I'd suggest, and I hope many of you agree with me, that the human being is not merely a biochemical phenomenon, simply differing complexity to my friend Mr. Tree over there, but rather a bearer of rights whose life has intrinsic meaning and value. Now, why this is so is a question for all of us to answer for ourselves. But if it is true, and if there is a reason for taking our values and ideals seriously, then we should be making choices today based on how we might evaluate them in retrospect, in terms of their ultimate meaning and their consistency with values that we've examined carefully. So my hope for all of us is that at the end of the journey that we're just beginning today, we might be able to look back and say that we've spent our life, our time, and our resources on things that we can be proud of, that we've been engaged in service to our fellow man and woman, and particularly those our society has ignored and neglected, that we've been true to our faith, our friends, and our family, and that we might be able to echo what one writer in the New Testament said at the end of his life: "I've fought the good fight, I've finished the race, and I've kept the faith." So congratulations to and God bless the class of 1998.
Our last student speaker is a political science and Russian major from Flemington, New Jersey, Susan McWilliams.
Being asked to speak about Amherst in 4 minutes or less reminds me of a Professor Sarrett paper topic. I'd like you to explain law with a capital L in 750 words or less. There's a reason I've never taken a Professor Sarrett class. I don't like that kind of impossibility, and I'm overwhelmed by the impossibility of this. Coming back to Amherst 2 days ago, though, nothing felt impossible to me. I was as close to suntanned as a Scotch-Irish can be. I had gotten sleep, and this really neat college was about to give me a piece of paper. I was cool. I was suave. I was smart, and I was a good driver. Yeah, I was perfection in $10 sunglasses. Then, as I was about to enter Connecticut, a road sign greeted me. "Welcome to Pennsylvania." I started to laugh. What a great joke, I thought, that someone had replaced the "Welcome to Connecticut" sign with one from another state. That's when Jim Estrangelo turned to me. "Which way are you going?" he asked. Long pause. I don't know. He glowered. "You're going west." It was true. I had driven good across New York the wrong way. So Jim, ever helpful, informed me, "You know, for a smart person, you're really stupid. You're the stupidest smart person I know." My cloak of invincibility fell off, and now I'm pretty much surprised I made it to graduation. But I'm not as surprised as my kindergarten teacher would be, Mrs. Plant. The woman spent the better part of my first year in the educational system trying to kick me out of it. I had this habit, see, that in the middle of a lesson, I would stand up, look around aimlessly, and then inevitably and without fail lie down on the floor and go to sleep. She thought I was, to put it kindly, a little less than stacked from the neck up. But after many tests and meetings and fights with my parents, it was determined that I was not dumb. I was just bored. I haven't had that problem at Amherst. Well, not exactly. I mean, I did still sleep through classes, but never because I didn't think I'd learn anything. It's hard to be bored at Amherst, which has kept me up all night, most nights, with insomniac roommates and postmodern reading assignments and Nintendo 64, and work on the student, and relationship problems, and waiting to turn 21, and breaking into the steam tunnels and building the arboretum, and holding court with the judge, and having debates about whether or not the Rebel Alliance in Star Wars would truly set up a just regime. On a more fundamental level, what's kept me jazzed up here is that Amherst is hard. And I'm not talking about in terms of the classes, no offense, Professor Arkes. As Michelle Jefferson said so perfectly 2 weeks ago, I've had my most miserable times here. I didn't expect that. Coming to Amherst from rural New Jersey, and yes, there is such a thing as rural New Jersey, I envisioned college as a utopia, and my utopia was comprised of beer, boys, and smart people. But I learned after my first night of tequila drinking that alcohol can leave you in sometimes unsavory ways. Last year I learned in the hardest way possible that a boy thankfully prevented from being here this weekend, could take more out of me than a fall out a 10th story window. And I think we've all learned that high SAT scores do not make people nice or good or necessarily endow them with any kind of common sense. Those realizations, though, come with the corresponding realization that even though there's no utopia in this world, not even for $30,000 a year, sorry, Mom and Dad, that there is good out there. I'm sure that at some point, your roommate gave you a hug and a tissue. Dean Lieber has probably given you an extension. And on one glorious day, Citibank gave you a MasterCard. In the last 4 years, many people have brought so much goodness to my life. Thank you, you know who you are, and to yours. And when you know there's good like that out there, you can keep fighting for it. Crash Davis said it about baseball in Bull Durham, but I'll say it about life. You gotta play this game with fear and arrogance. Maybe someday you have to truly believe President Garrity will know your name. And I think of my friend Jasmine, who told me 5 years ago that she wished, if nothing else, that I would have a hard life. That it's the people who are challenged, who challenge themselves, who get the most out of everything. I, too, have had my most miserable times here, but I wouldn't trade them. And so as we go out tomorrow to case another promised land, this is what I wish for everyone in the class of 1998. That the trip home is never too easy, that you don't let yourself get bored even when you're stuck in the mundane, that there will always be more you want to talk about than you can say in the time you have. Thank you.
When we first began the search to find a Class Day speaker, I was determined that the criteria we used was not to be about fame or celebrity or wealth. Okay, despite the incessant requests from classmates that we get everyone from Oprah to Jimmy Carter to Selma Hayek. Personally, I just wanted someone with a sense of honesty, integrity, and virtue, someone to help inspire me in the midst of all my angst about careerism and selling out to the corporate man. And perhaps most importantly, I was searching for someone whose optimism would far outweigh his or her cynicism. In other words, I thought I was searching for the impossible in contemporary America. But along came this singularly unique profile full of the most extraordinary and bizarre details and facts about a 47-year-old lawyer from Springfield, Illinois named Joseph Hartzler. It is an absolute honor to be able to introduce this afternoon someone who exemplifies the ideal American citizens as much as this man does. Please help me in welcoming the Assistant Attorney General from Springfield, Illinois, but even more importantly, from the Amherst College class of 1972, Mr. Joseph Hartzler.
I had no idea this would be so much fun. It's a tremendous honor to be here, but it's also extremely humbling. You realize that 26 years ago, I didn't sit up here, I sat out there. We had it turned around facing the library, but I sat out there and looked up, and for the life of me, I haven't the faintest idea who spoke. I don't remember if it was a man or a woman, black or white, color of hair, what they, you know, the one thing, I'm fairly certain she wasn't naked. But let's face it, the same will be true of you. You will not remember me 2 years from now, 2 months from now. You know, some of you, it won't take 2 hours. Garrison Keillor refers to most commencement speakers as self-erasing. But I like the concept. You know, commencement speakers talk about those principles in life, and one of the principles in life that I've tried to follow, as expressed in this glorious introduction by Irene, is resist self-importance. And I certainly did that during the bombing case. I didn't get involved because I wanted to become a minor celebrity of some sort. I didn't get involved because of the personal glory. And for any of you that think these kinds of experiences are fun, the ratio between fame and hard work is about 1 to 1 million for hard work. It's just a lot of hard work. I did it. I got involved because the nation was hurt, and I thought I could make a difference. 3 years ago, I was a government lawyer who toiled away in relative obscurity in Springfield, Illinois. I wasn't then invited to speak at commencements. Shucks, my wife and I were rarely invited to Christmas parties back then. Then the tragedy in Oklahoma City occurred, and my appointment as the lead prosecutor catapulted me into some national prominence. But I didn't take advantage of any of these opportunities, the Larry King type opportunities for self-aggrandizement. But that opportunity was not lost on my children, even before I was first appointed. You see, before I was selected, I went through a series of interviews in Washington, D.C. at the Department of Justice, and one of the toughest questions I was asked was, well, can you make a commitment for 2 years? I said, well, I can't make a commitment for 2 minutes without consulting with my family. And the guy that was interviewing me said, well, okay, why don't you do that? And I thought he was going to push the telephone across the table and let me call them up right then and there, but in fact, I was allowed to go home, and we sat around the kitchen table. And this really gave me an opportunity to present my Amherst credentials to my entire family. My oldest son, Alex, was 10 years old at the time, and I could tell that he was not keen on having his father be gone for 2 years. So I really tried to wax eloquent about due process and the importance of this case to the American people. I was figuratively wrapping myself in the flag, unabashedly trying to convince him and the others in the family of my commitment to the ideals on which this nation was founded. And of course, you realize we learn about these ideals through high school and then particularly at Amherst. You learn about due process, the presumption of innocence, you learn about reasonable doubt, and all these things that those of us involved in law enforcement and in the law really, truly believe in. But how often in life do you ever really get an opportunity to implement these kind of lofty ideals? Well, here was my opportunity. It was an opportunity for me to show the American people that prosecutors, that is our government, is not simply devoted to getting convictions and executing people that commit murders, but what we're committed to is the process of justice. That's more important to me. And I knew that nothing would be more important in this case than showing the American people that the system of justice works, that it's a fair process, that even a mass murderer who killed babies and toddlers gets due process. And I knew that in the end, all that would really matter, win or lose, was the achievement of justice with dignity. Well, I feel that way today. This is your day for celebration, not my day, so I congratulate you. But I do want to share some of the things that we have in common. What we have in common, of course, comes from Amherst College. Some of you, I'm sure, will be delighted to learn that I was not an especially strong student when at Amherst. Some of the professors got through to me a little better than others. For example, my freshman physics professor. He got through to me. He wrote on my final exam, first semester, freshman year, D-. And after the D-, he wrote, a gift. Yeah, he got through to me all right, loud and clear. I had planned on majoring in physics. I didn't plan on that after I received that little gift. I went on to graduate in the bottom 10% of my class. I tell people that I graduated in the top 95%. You know, most people fall for it. It's unbelievable. Many of you here tomorrow will graduate cum laude. Some of you, like me, will be wondering, does that have anything to do with kumbaya? Well, for those of us, like myself, who graduate kumbaya, just think of the rest of your life as a challenge to prove to your classmates that you're really better disciplined and smarter than they are. You just regarded college as an exhibition game, and now the real season starts. Despite my seemingly poor academic achievement at Amherst, I learned a tremendous number of valuable lessons. I've already told you about resisting self-importance. In a place like Amherst, you learn that, I think, in part because the place is so steeped in tradition, hundreds of years, and there's nothing cheap and sleazy about it. Certainly nothing cheap. That kind of rich tradition provides each of us with a solid foundation on which to launch our careers. And there's no need for self-inflation. Amherst provided each of you with a solid base. Your value will be obvious wherever you go. And just in case you're getting a big head about your Amherst education, I invite you to come join us out on the prairie of America someplace and tell people there that you went to Amherst College. You already know what they'll say. Emerson College? Yeah, that's in Iowa, isn't it? Perhaps the most valuable lesson I learned at Amherst is to avoid apathy. I graduated from Amherst during the Vietnam years, and student apathy was anathema to my friends and myself. Perhaps things have changed, but I doubt it. Here at Amherst, we were taught to care about others, care about what was happening in the world, and to become part of the solution. And that's what I did. I suspect that those lessons are still taught here now. On April 19th, 1995, the day of the Oklahoma City bombing, I heard about the tragedy on my car radio as I was driving home from work to coach a youth baseball team. The reporter described how a massive explosion had torn off the very front, the entire front of a 9-story building, and the floors had fallen down, pancaking one upon the other. The number of people killed was already monumental, and it was expected to climb. And then, of course, as many of you remember, we learned with horror what was on the second floor of that building, the Children's Daycare Center. All of this touched me deeply as I drove westbound on I-72 in central Illinois, heading toward my home. The news report was similar to the reports that we would get here at Amherst during the late 60s and early 70s about Vietnam, with the death toll constantly climbing. And perhaps it was that connection with Vietnam that caused what I refer to as my Amherst instinct to kick in. As I drove westbound, I thought, as I often did at Amherst, maybe I can help. Maybe I can make a difference. And with that thought in mind, I considered just driving on continuing to Oklahoma. I had some prior experience with terrorism cases. I knew the law enforcement effort would be monumental and would need assistance. I wasn't then thinking of a leadership role. I was thinking I could go to help draft bank subpoenas and search warrants. I figured I could call my wife from the road, have her cancel baseball practice. You know, I could stop in a drugstore and pick up a toothbrush and contact lens solution. I'd drive into town, stop at the police station, and volunteer my services. And I was seconds away from my exit when I realized I have no idea where I'm going. I didn't have a map in the car. I had never driven west of St. Louis. I couldn't even remember exactly. Was it Oklahoma? I knew it was someplace over there past Arkansas or someplace. I drove home. I coached baseball. But the feeling that I could make a difference stayed with me. And the feeling that I must try to make a difference stayed with me. So I volunteered. And eventually, with my family's approval, I made a commitment to devote 2 years of my life to the case. Did I make a difference? I hope so. Can each of you? I know so. In 1991, as you heard, I left a lucrative job as a partner at a prestigious law firm in Chicago. I was making more money then than I am now. But no money in the world could possibly provide me with the gratification I derive from serving this nation in my capacity as a prosecutor for the United States of America. You can't put a price on doing good. You can't put a price on the gratification that I derive from serving justice and doing it with dignity. You too can have that feeling, not in the same job. Get involved in your community, and don't ever do anything just for the money. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. We're the senior gift officers, Darren Malamy and Natalie Elivert. In the long-standing tradition of senior gifts, our class has been working to donate an enduring gift to the college. This endeavor has been a symbolic beginning for our transition to the alumni body. Over half of our class has contributed to the senior gift, and collectively, we've raised over $3,715.
This year's gift is an outdoor seating area in honor of Tom Johnson. Tom Johnson, class of 20, was a loyal Amherst supporter until his death in March. He was a vehement believer in giving back to Amherst and demonstrated this spirit in part by handcrafting applewood trays for each graduating class, including our own. Tom felt that the most important function of a college education is to help the student discover aptitudes and desires for a lifetime career. In memory of this sentiment, we've dedicated our gift to him, and before we embark on our post-Amherst careers, on behalf of the class of 1998, President Garrity, we present this check to the college.
assembled for the 177th commencement of Amherst College, please be in order.
It is now my pleasure to introduce the senior chosen by the class to address you this morning. He's Bradford G. Johnson, who has completed a major in physics, and he comes from Boston, Massachusetts. Brad.
Esteemed faculty, friends, family, classmates, be not afraid. I come in peace to offer a message of hope. I shall lift your spirits and let them rise to the heavens, where they shall be free to frolic. This is a moment of splendor, and I shall not desecrate that moment. This is a most glorious day. The sky is an unbroken vault of blue. Trust me. But I'm not here to lie or speak in platitudes and homilies. This speech has received a rating of PG-13 from the Motion Pictures Association of America for language, violence, and brief nudity. All unauthorized transmission or rebroadcast without written consent is expressly forbidden. So parents, if you want to protect your children, please usher them from the tent now.
I will unleash the power of Satan upon thee.
Well, just kidding. That's a performance I cannot top, especially since I don't have any witch puppets. I don't want to leave out the family and friends, so here's something for you. I speak for all of my classmates, as I am singularly qualified to do so, when I say that without your love and support, emotional and financial, especially financial, none of us could reach this moment. So thank you. Okay, now that I got that over with, I can address the important people here. My class. The class of '98. You've touched me, I've touched you. The touching you'd think would be more on my side than on yours, but you've shaped who I am, whether we've played together on the fields or in the courts, acted together or hiked together or ate together or sat and slept in class together or partied or danced or sung together or talked, studied, argued, cogitated, hypothesized, or theorized together. So I have some final questions for us to ponder. Deep, meaningful questions. Oozing, slithering questions. What does Amherst College stand for? We could have gone to any of the Ivies, the little Ivies, and the various other colleges scattered around the nation, like Grinnell and the Pomona colleges that we may as well call the new Ivies. All these colleges promise 4 years of enriching education in beautifully groomed surroundings. So what makes Amherst special? I mean, does it even have a clear identity? I mean, I hope it's more than you'll be able to get a job, or we produce investment bankers. But right now, it sometimes seems to be the closest thing to an identity that Amherst has. No more is it just the Ferris College, or the singing college, or even the writing college. Then again, no longer is it the all-male fraternity college of yesteryear. And that's something I'm very happy about. All I know is that our Amherst expected us to be mature from day one, mature enough to handle no core curriculum, freshman parking, mixed class housing, co-ed bathrooms, and open keggers. Our RCs gave us condoms, not censure. And I think we are a pretty damn mature class, one that's composed of reasonably self-assured people. But then again, I got elected to do this speech, which is damn exciting. I'm trembling right now. I can feel delicious shivers coursing through my body. After I was elected speaker, people pretty much all said the same things. I mean, at least to me. which I'm glad that you're speaking. I voted for you. What are you going to say? Give me a shout out. Give me a shout out or I'll kill you. And I've got some issues with that. I mean, honestly, I don't get why people threaten me. You know? I certainly wouldn't have thought anything of it if only one person did, but at least 3 different people came up to me and threatened bodily harm if I didn't mention them or their associated call phrases. Unsurprisingly, they were all male. There definitely seems to be something in the air that encourages testosterone-driven behavior. But I had honestly thought that people would have grown up past the point of using physical threats to get what they want. Unless, of course, they're planning to move into an occupation where violence is necessary, like organized crime or teaching kindergarten. Well, even if it was meant in field humor, which I'm sure is what they would say, it did make me uncomfortable. And it saddened me because it makes me wonder what they'll be like in the real world. I mean, come on, you've been coddled enough. Act like a man. And that doesn't mean act like an asshole. Just be an adult. Well, okay, enough with the attitude. Don't get me wrong, I love you way more than I should. I'm just grumpy since it's 10:35 or something. And I made sure this entire semester that I didn't have to get up before noon. And here I am in front of all of you and my parents and my grandparents when I should be sleeping off a night of partying. And all of us should. So I'll tell you what you want to hear. How to be like me in 7 easy steps. 1, the ethos of jamais vu, as introduced in the Jamais Vu papers, or Misadventures in the Worlds of Science, Myth, and Magic by Wim Coleman and Pat Perrin. Jamais vu is, of course, the opposite of déjà vu. It's the sense that you've never been there before. Which is easy when you go to someplace new or try something new, but it's more difficult when it's retread territory. The trick is to look upon the daily, the mundane, the familiar in a new light every time. Every person that you know can surprise you with who they are and will be. A gray, dreary day and November becomes the soft, muted sky behind the solid gray building. Its rough-hewn stone serious and commanding, and the startled branches of a bare tree reaching, dividing the sky into pockets of void. A solitary leaf, hanging forlornly alone, daring the winds to strip it from its moorings. That leaf seems to me to be rather defiant in its solitary command of the entire tree, the entire sky even. Well, or maybe it's just a leaf. But you never know, trees are clever. 2, let yourself be the center of attention. Even if you're not ready, and especially if you're not ready, don't wait for people to force you into the center of the dance circle, chanting your name to start freaking and jigging, you know, na 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 na, na 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 na. 3, people will resent you for invading their precious personal bubbles. Do it anyway. They are driven crazy by someone who runs through Valentine and shouts and sings and drops trays and whistles. That could be anyone. But why? Some of it, I'm sure, has to do with the interruption of the wonderful and beautiful dining experience that is Valentine. But more simply this: you are involuntarily disturbed when someone else puts into question the reasons for your conformity. Why don't you break into song when you're happy? Or why do you break into song when you're drunk? Break the mold. I mean, which of us has gone into the steam tunnels? Yeah! And which of us has gone to the planetarium? Yeah! Which of us has streaked through the computer center? Which of us has played Frisbee at midnight? Yeah! Which of us has read a book by candlelight? Which of us went to a musical or theatrical performance by a classmate you didn't know? You know? I can't say I did all those things, but Ben Chang can. And so it's very hard to break from the comfort of regularity. Life is a constant barrage of rhythms, regularities that can overtake your soul if you're not vigilant. The new becomes quotidian imperceptibly. Speaking of imperceptible, how about some of our professors' hairlines? I just had to throw in a snap somewhere. Peace, peace. 5, every single person you meet has something that can make you happy. I mean, just some of them, it's not worth it. Like last summer, what's like this? So there's this park in the east side of New York here, and I'm strolling through it, and this dude comes up to me. He's wearing a T-shirt all red and black and ripped jean shorts and high tops, all beat up like he's a serious skater, man. And he says to me, "Where were you on July 17, 1981? And I don't know. It's a crazy question like to ask someone, especially that long ago. You know, he looks, I was like 5 or something. And so I say, "I don't know, man." He just looks at me, and I can tell him he's thinking something fierce, and he goes into his pocket, and he gives me a little wooden matchbox with a dragon embossed on the lid, and he says, "You're gonna need this, dude." And he just walks on by me and dips out of sight. Man, that's some weird shit. 6, let people laugh at you. Laughter is a beautiful thing. It's like a diamond in an eggshell. It's more valuable than it looks, but you can't eat it. And if you shake it, it goes clunk, clunk. 7, which is the last. Always ask yourself, what's the point? What's the point? Because it's real, you know? So now you've got an ideal, me, to strive for the future, molding yourself into a new and better person. College is a time of artificial boundaries, 4 years that burrow into one shining moment of ceremonial release. Right now. This is it, baby. This is it. Oh, behave. College focuses our accomplishments. Freshman year, we're broken free from our homes, our high school lives, our families. Many are drawn to the fun of keg parties, and they're great fun, but we realize that it's the meeting new people, forming bonds, exploring a sense of freedom that is fun. It's not getting hammered and passed out. Some people don't recognize that. But sophomore year, Amherst it's our home. We don't need to go to parties to find connections because we already have those connections. We own the campus. We don't have to think about our time after Amherst, and we think we know its secrets. Junior year, we learned to escape Amherst. We realized that now Amherst is too small to be our entire world. I think it's at this time, at least I started being able to think. Senior year, we find that Amherst is our home, but no more so than our parents and our friends. Our world is the entire world. We can be home anywhere because ties of friendship aren't bound to this soil. Well, who we are isn't dependent on any brick or slat or blade of grass. Where we are is home. Please, spend your life searching for the green light or searching for it inside of yourself, but don't stop growing. Find a dream and make it grow. This is a fine morning, but we still beat on. That's right. Beat on. Beat on, baby. Beat on. Let's give it up for the class of '98. Let's give it up for Liquid Magyar and all you other people that Zoo love. Yeah. Thank you, and good night. I'll get that later.
It is now my pleasure to confer honorary degrees on behalf of Amherst College. We honor men and women who have brought honor to the professions and public service, including several of our own most distinguished alumni, and others who by this conferral will become alumni of a special kind. As today we send new graduates forth to serve in the world at large, we also welcome to Amherst people who are exemplary in the worlds they already have. They honor us by their presence here today. The first of these today is Tucker Collins of the class of 1975. Tucker. Today, we are honored to add our tribute to the many you have already received: the Warner Lambert Park Davis Award in Experimental Pathology, the Merit Award of the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, and so on. And we commend you, Tucker, for your helping to induct yet another generation of promising young men and women into the great adventure that is medical research. By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Amherst College, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Science honoris causa with all the rights and privileges pertaining thereto. Congratulations, Tucker. John Hope Franklin, Doctor of Humane Letters. How do you do, Dr. Franklin? You once said that scholars must use their talents and knowledge to help solve America's problems, and that the toughest of our problems is still what you called the color line. Today, at century's end, you say it is time to turn history around. Again, you are pointing the way, recently accepting President Clinton's request to chair the advisory board of his initiative on race. You say you are hopeful, even though the task of racial healing is so enormous that it strains the imagination. As we celebrate your teaching, your scholarship, we also encourage you and wish to join you in the task of healing. By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Amherst College, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Humane Letters honoris causa with all the rights and privileges pertaining thereto. Congratulations, Dr. Franklin. Thank you for the input. Richard M. Freeland of the class of 1963, Doctor of Laws. Hi, Richard. Living up to our motto, Terras Irradiant, let them give their light to the world, for almost 2 centuries, Amherst graduates have had a proud reputation of becoming educational leaders around the globe. Since your graduation from Amherst 35 years ago, you have honored and strengthened this record with a devoted career as educator and scholar, and today you give that tradition new luster as the dynamic president of one of the country's great urban universities, Northeastern. Higher education, you insist, should push back against economic forces that divide us, the social forces that weaken us as a people, and do its part to ensure opportunity for every citizen. In that effort, President Freeland, we cheer you on. And by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Amherst College, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Laws honoris causa with all the rights and privileges pertaining thereto. Congratulations, Bill. Joseph H. Hartzler, class of 1972, Doctor of Laws. As you told us yesterday on your car radio on April 19, 1995, you heard that a bomb had exploded at the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. With the rest of the world, you soon learned that 168 men, women, and children had been killed in history's most appalling act of terrorism on American soil. As an assistant U.S. attorney in Springfield, Illinois, you said you wanted to make a difference and that whoever did this should spend some time in hell. In 1995, the Multiple Sclerosis Society honored you as Father of the Year. A week later, you were named to lead the prosecution of Timothy McVeigh. Your wife has said that nothing fills you with more pride than at the beginning of a case saying, "My name is Joe Hartzler, and I represent the United States of America." You fill your college, too, with enormous pride this morning and in your career. By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Amherst College, I confer upon you, Joe, the degree Doctor of Laws honoris causa with all the rights and privileges pertaining thereto. Gwen Eiffel, Doctor of Humane Letters. Gwen? Savvy and probing national correspondent for NBC News, you bring into focus for us the obscure ways of Washington. In the first 5 months of '98 alone, you have covered health insurance and Medicare funding, campaign finance reform, tax breaks for educations, hearings about IRS abuses, and of course the Washington stories that erupted during what President Clinton has called the week the Pope went to Cuba. Scandal, you have said, is Washington's cottage industry. Uncovering a bit of the truth is what the industry you're in, and you do it with a thoroughness that brings us a better understanding of our government and its political ways. By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Amherst College, I confer upon you, Gwen Eiffel, the degree Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa, with all the rights and privileges pertaining thereto. Congratulations, Gwen. Aaron Jonathan Lansky. Aaron. A native English speaker from New Bedford, Mass., you grew up in a Jewish household where Yiddish was seldom spoken. Later, as a student of Jewish history at Hampshire College in the 1970s, you developed a passionate interest in the culture that the Nazis had tried to destroy, and in its lingua franca, Yiddish. Today, we salute your brilliant, dogged, and selfless efforts, which have helped fulfill the prophecy of a leading Yiddish scholar who once said, "Yiddish has magic, it will outwit history." By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Amherst College, I confer upon you, Aaron, the degree Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa, with all the rights and privileges pertaining thereto. Congratulations. Richard S. Lefrak, class of 1967, Doctor of Humane Letters. Richard. Born into a family of legendary builders, you formally became a member of the firm at the tender age of 15. While at Amherst, you quietly prepared for your life's work by studying economics and writing an honors thesis on urban renewal, demonstration cities, and some speculation on future programs. Challenge gets you going. You have likened building in New York to solving a terribly complicated puzzle, a fascinating exercise that requires all your reserves of intelligence, experience, and patience. Building, you have said, is also a means of leaving a legacy. Well known for your generosity, your philanthropy, you and your family have left Amherst a legacy in the handsome gymnasium that bears your name. Today, we proudly salute your own master builder and his legacy, newly secured, we are told, by the addition of a fourth-generation Lefrak to the firm. By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Amherst College, I confer upon you, Richard, the degree Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa, with all the rights and privileges pertaining thereto. Congratulations. Tilly Lerner Olson. Tilly Olson, we honor you today for the voices you have given to women and men, fictional and real, anguished and joyous, the voices you have redeemed from silence. In 1969, you were the first woman to be named writer-in-residence here. In addition to your writing seminars, you developed a popular course on the literature of poverty, work, and the human struggle for freedom. You returned to Amherst in '77 as a Copeland Fellow, lecturing to overflow audiences and making the Valley a less silent place for women, for mothers, for daughters, and for all who would hear other voices and seek their own. Your granddaughter, Juanita Laurel Olson Hoy, graduated from Amherst in '96. Tell me a riddle, Grandma. I know no riddles. By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Amherst College, I confer upon you, Tilly Olson, the degree Doctor of Literature, honoris causa, with all the rights and privileges pertaining thereto. Congratulations. One of our most distinguished faculty is retiring this year, and I would like to honor him, and we would like to honor him with a citation. John Pemberton, would you please come to the podium? Jack? There he is. John Pemberton III, Stanley Warfield Crosby Professor of Religion. You arrived here in the fall of 1958, a young assistant professor with a new PhD from Duke, and you retire in 1998 after 4 decades of teaching and service, 3 decades as a full professor, over 2 decades in the Crosby Chair, a 3-year stint as the Andrew W. Mellon Professor of Humanities, service on every college committee, and certainly every major college committee, and several incarnations as chair of the Department of Religion, a department you nurtured to strength when the single Department of Philosophy and Religion became 2. The range of your teaching is no less broad and deep. You have taught Introduction to Religion countless times, but always with freshness. Other courses include the Christian Religious Tradition, Theories of Religion, a watershed course for generations of Amherst students, and of course, your specialty and great love, taught under such headings as Religion and Art in Africa, Myth and Ritual in West Africa, and Asian and African Divination, Ways of Knowing, Rituals of Healing. You have embodied and enlarged Amherst traditions of interdisciplinary and team teaching. You have taught in Black Studies and Fine Arts, as well as religion, and you have taken many turns at ILS courses and colloquia. Your life's work on Yoruba art and religion has produced an extraordinary number of books and exhibition catalogs, dozens of articles and reviews, scores of lectures, papers, and exhibitions, research awards from the National Endowment for the Humanities, the National Geographic Society, the Ford Foundation, as well as Amherst's own research award program for faculty. Your most recent books, co-authored with H.J. Druel and Amherst Newton Professor of Fine Arts and Black Studies, Roland Abiodun, are The Yoruba Artist in 1994, Yoruba Art and Aesthetics in 91, and Yoruba, 9 Centuries of African Art and Thought in 1989. The last of these was described by its TLS reviewer as, quote, one of the most beautiful and comprehensive tributes to Yoruba art, a book that, quote, combines immaculate visual documentation of the art with the highest standards of scholarship. For several years now, the first photograph in the Amherst College catalog has been a wonderful shot of a professor leaning attentively and encouragingly toward a small group of students, listening to one of them with visible interest and respect. It is a picture of all that Amherst strives to be. It's a photograph, Jack Pemberton, of you. You wrote once that Amherst is a demanding and rewarding place in which to teach. It asks much of those who would live within it and offers rich resources for the doing of one's work. You leave us profoundly grateful for the richness of your 40 years here and for the high standards you have set for all of us. Thank you very much, Jack.
These woods belong
I don't need to tell you who are graduating today, and I absolutely don't need to tell the faculty, that Amherst is an argumentative place. People here argue over many issues, sometimes issues that the outside world would not understand or think worthy of argument. Principles are articulated for nearly everything that we do, and at times it seems that we do nothing, even eat, drink, or sleep, without first battling over the theory of it, the justice of it. This is right and good, as I see it, and makes us the college that we are. William Blake called it mental fight, and in his boldest assertion of its rightness said, "I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land." So too at Amherst, there is an unceasing mental fight over what it means to have this college on this hill, built and rebuilt daily by students, by faculty, by staff, by alumni. As you graduates make your way down Route 9 today, I want to urge you to keep on fighting, to keep on arguing in the tradition of this college and its scholars. Think of Amherst as a place where everything is questioned and challenged, yes. But think of it, too, as a place where some things are put forward and defended with the swords of argument. These two intellectual postures of question and assertion will prove vital to your intellectual and moral lives in all the years to come. Works of the imagination, works of reason, works of compassion, all must take some question as their own and make some assertion, some statement of faith in response to the world. More mental fight is needed precisely because mental fight substitutes for and makes unnecessary the physical fight that so often settles questions in the world at large. Rouse up, Blake said, to stop those who would forever depress mental and prolong corporeal war. There can be no Jerusalem, no realized ideal without sustained mental fight. Let me give you two examples where the American Jerusalem, by which I understand the American democracy, needs more and more passionate mental fight. For many, many years, Amherst College has held fast to an ideal of financial assistance that we have described with the awkward term, need blind. Let me be plain about what that means to us. It means that we admit our classes without regard to the means of their families to send them here. We say, in effect, come to Amherst regardless of your wealth or poverty. If you cannot afford our charges, we will reduce them with financial aid. It means as well that we will provide enough aid to make it practical to come. We will, in other words, as we say, meet the full need of those we've invited to come. We've worried in the last several years that our calculations are not generous enough for students with family incomes, particularly in the middle range. We've known all along that generosity here must be defined in relation both to what families have to spend and to what Amherst can reasonably budget. But generosity must also be measured on a marketplace that has become newly frenzied in the last decade and even in the last year. More and more schools have decided that they will not treat all students equally in distributing financial aid. Some will get more than others, not because their families need more help, but because someone has decided that the students in question are more desirable or more deserving than other members of the incoming class. Thus, these scholarships are called across the land merit scholarships. They go to students without regard to need. They are, in fact, enticement scholarships meant to promote the enrollment of students with somewhat better grades or SATs or a better passing arm or what have you. So many of our brethren institutions offer these that I hesitate to condemn merit scholarships out of hand. But as citizens, we need to argue this question out with real care and passion. If there is a limited amount of money in a college endowment or a government program of financial aid, then it is simple arithmetic to conclude that the more money that goes to those who do not need it, the less there will be for those who do. And as competitive anxieties spread the practice from one institution to the next, as we watch both Swarthmore and Williams, for example, do this, then the total amount of money available to those with the greatest need will diminish as the money is used to enroll those deemed meritorious. At Amherst, we know that we will be pressed to be more generous. I want to hope with you that we will never be pressed so hard as to give up our commitments to an egalitarian admissions process where financial aid goes to those who most need it. Now, across the country, and in the Congress in particular, this argument is going to grow more and more heated in the years ahead. And I don't tell you where to stand as graduates of Amherst. You know where your alma mater stands. But I do tell you, engage in this fight, civilly, thoughtfully, intelligently, but with the passion that comes from a sense of just how much is at stake for our American democracy. Let me mention another fight. A fierce but none too mental fight now rages in California and Texas and in the Congress about the next steps beyond civil rights towards real integration, real wholeness in our democracy. We all know that the recognition of civil rights for all citizens has not brought us into our American Jerusalem. We still have castes of a sort in America, whole groups of people whose economic and political future is settled almost in advance by their racial or ethnic identities. And the plight of these castes has not much improved, and in some cases has much worsened in the great internationalization and expansion of our economy over the last decade and more. Where do we go as a country from here? This is a large question with many sorts of answers. At Amherst, we have been resolute about one aspect of this question. For a generation and more now, we have believed passionately on the board, in the faculty, among our students and alumni, that Amherst's classes should be as fully integrated as we can make them. We have practiced an aggressive affirmative action of seeking out qualified students who might not think of Amherst at first. And we have been definite about the need to have classes like your own, where the backgrounds and colors and convictions of our students bespeak an American intellectual leadership truly, if imperfectly, integrated. There are sharp disagreements in America and in the world about how to reach our Jerusalem of an integrated democracy, without castes or exclusions. Some argue that race neutrality or color blindness is what is needed. This is a powerful argument, but not, in my view, a deeply historical or practical one. It is an argument with a question behind it, an urgent question for you in your lives as for Amherst in its life. How can we reach the place we all know to be the right place, the place where you can open any door in America, in any office or studio or classroom, and find a person there who found her or his way without race dictating the outcome? At Amherst, we are committed to the widest possible diversity. We need to take risks as an institution to achieve that diversity. We need to use our resources aggressively. And above all, we need to push ourselves hard to approach our ideal of an American Jerusalem. You may disagree with Amherst's commitments and policies. Of course, we welcome argument and we welcome disagreement. But I ask you again to take on the mental fight needed to keep these questions and commitments before us and before our country. And Amherst without diversity is a less interesting, less exciting, less intellectually and morally challenging place. It is not the Amherst we know and love, and the one that we care enough to fight over. But an America that does not realize its ideals of integration and participation is much worse than uninteresting or unintellectual. It is illegitimate, and in an important sense, it is undemocratic. I hope that we have challenged you here, each of you, and I hope that you have acquired a real taste for mental fight. Go now and challenge yourselves on a wider front and in bigger struggles. Challenge us all and build your own Jerusalem. Congratulations.
Will the candidates for the degree Bachelor of Arts please present themselves? Will the candidates please rise? President Garrity, on behalf of the faculty of Amherst College, I present to you candidates qualified to receive the degree Bachelor of Arts.
By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Amherst College, I confer upon all of you the degree Bachelor of Arts with all the rights, privileges pertaining thereto. Congratulations.
Still as shining as Thank you.